Hello, everybody. Welcome into the Apples and Genos Fantasy Hockey Podcast. My name is Nate Groot Niblink. I'm the creator of Apples and Genos, originator of the Zero G Draft Strategy. And in this podcast, Blake and I are going to bring you our top 10 sleepers for fantasy this season. Let's get it. And of course, I have your friend and my best friend, the man with the strongest stream. It's Blake Creamer. Blake, how are we feeling tonight?
The strongest stream. Yeah. I mean, my urologist will thank you. You know what? That's a sign of true friendship, my man. You ever cross the streams? Like you ever just go to a lake, you stare out at the lake, you're with your buddy, and you just cross the streams right into the lake, and you feel really good about that. Has that ever happened to you?
I don't know how comfortable you're feeling about sharing your streaming experiences, but I think I'd like to keep my streaming experiences centered around fantasy hockey.
We're talking about
this
like
podcast.
internet streams, aren't we? That's what we're talking. What are you saying?
Oh, yeah, definitely. That's
yeah. I mean, like out in the forest, you have your laptop. You know what I'm talking about?
Right. Exactly. Okay. Yeah, we're on the same page for sure.
Yeah, I feel good about this.
Well, what we're doing today, we're talking about 10 sleepers that we brought to the table. We'll throw in a couple honorable mentions each as well for the people, but we wanted to bring you the players that we're thinking about. This is a little bit independent of ADP. We know that there's various ADP sources. If you're on ESPN, your ADP is going to be very different from Yahoo, which is going to be very different again from Fantrax. Wherever you're playing fantasy hockey this year, you are going to have some differences across your ADP. We'll get to ADP. We'll do some shows around ADP values and ADP reaches that we'll find on the different platforms. But right now, what we want to do for this episode, we want to talk about sleepers, guys that we think might break out in a big way this year, might provide much more value than they did last year, might bring something extra to your fantasy team this year and really put you over the top in your pursuit of fantasy hockey glory. Blake, how did I do with defining our sleepers for the good people?
Oh God, you're jacking me up, buddy. I swear I'm slightly aroused, and you know what? That's fine. It's Saturday. We're feeling good. There's no judgment here, right, Nate?
No judgment whatsoever, except for this first pick. No, I'm just kidding. I'm in on this one.
Segue.
Blake, give us your first sleeper. I'm in on this one too.
Okay, sweet. Well, I appreciate the endorsement there, Nate. That makes me feel better. One thing, even before we get into the sleeper here, just on sleepers in general, like something I looked at when I was trying to pick my 5 sleepers here is players that had a stinky season, right? Coming off a stinky season. And, we're not talking ADP, but yeah, these guys are moving down the draft board, right? They're going under the radar because they disappointed their fantasy managers last year. And that equals value for us. And starting right here in my hometown, Vancouver Canucks, I'm taking Jake DeBrusk. Obviously, if you're on YouTube, you can see on the screen here. But I think Jake DeBrusk is really primed for a career high. And I've said this on our podcast. I was on Locked On Canucks the other day. I said, Jake DeBrusk is going to have a career year. And I really, truly believe that. Like, this guy's coming off a 40-point season in 80 games. That stinks, right? He was in Boston. He requested a trade a little while back. I mean, he was kind of on his way out, right? He was just sort of biding his time. He wasn't getting prioritized. Well, now opportunity is knocking. He's been traded to the Canucks here, and there's a spot in the top 6. There's a spot on the top power play, and this is a good power play here in Vancouver. So I think that Jake DeBrusk is going to slot right in there. And this is a guy that has never seen true top power play time, like ever. He did see just under 3 minutes power play time on ice in 2022-23 with Boston. 53% power play share, whatever. I think that's going to go way up here in Vancouver. I think he's going to be a staple on that top power play. His career high power play points is 14 power play points. I think he's going to smash it this year. I think I've got him for 19. That's not exactly a smash, but I'm not trying to go crazy with my projections here, right? Like you can see on the screen here, I projected him for 64 points after a 40-point season last year. I think this is the definition of a sleeper, right? I mean, this guy was brought in to play with Petey, Pettersson. And I think they're going to give that a good hard look. Like Pettersson, just as an aside, he had rotating line mates last year. And I think that was part of his, a little bit of his downturn in production there, especially in the back half. So like, if you look at some of his line mates, yeah, he played with Ilya Mikheyev and the big Kuzi, Andrei Kuzmenko, right? The no forechecker. He just doesn't do that. He's a midfielder. He just stays in between the blue lines. He doesn't do that. But yeah, I mean, he was playing with Sam Lafferty, Nils Höglander. Jake DeBrusk is here to play with Petey, and I think that's really going to be a good match because he's a great forechecker as well, Jake DeBrusk. I really like that about him. I mean, where are you at with DeBrusk here, Nate? Because 64 points, I think, if I remember correctly, I was higher on him for sure. But do you think that he can come close to the 64 points?
I do think he can. After that discussion that we had, it was one of the first discussions we had, and you're significantly higher on him. I did mark him to go back and take a second look, and I did end up adjusting him upwards in my projections as well. So I've got him up to 28 goals, 30 assists, 58 points right now.
Beauty.
But that comes along with, 222 hits. I've got him for 102 hits, rather. What did I say? 222
hits? I'm like, yeah, I'll take 222 hits from Jake DeBrusk. Okay.
222 shots, 102 hits is what I've got him for. And that's in 17 and a half minutes. Like, I think there are some scenarios in which they love him enough that they just run him out there for, exactly what I have for the other big three, Miller, Besser, and Pedersen. Closer to 15 minutes, even strength time on ice. And in that case, then, yeah, you're pushing even higher above the ceiling. I've still got him, I've got him at 10.5% on ice shooting percentage. That's at least 1% below those other big three guys there.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So there's room there if everything goes right. I don't like to, just project that everything's going to go perfect for a player in a new situation like this, but he's going to be given every opportunity. I think the Canucks have pretty much made that clear. It's a 7-year deal, $5.5 million average. Like, it's pretty clear to me that they really prioritize this player this offseason, and I'm allowing that, I guess, to factor in a little bit more. Hopefully Rick Tocchet loves his player as much as his GM does, and we see the fruition of all that come to bear. But yeah, I would say 58 points I feel good about as a medium projection, but what you want out of your sleepers is the chance for them to absolutely smash that projection, and I do think Jake DeBrusk has that potential. All right, let's move over. Let's talk about my first guy. It's got to be Adam Fantilli. I've been talking about this guy all off season. My prediction for him is 28 goals, 31 assists, 59 points as a baseline. Obviously, with the tragic passing of Johnny Gaudreau, they're going to be looking for a bit more of an offensive identity on this team, and I think that they have to look at Fantilli as that guy. Like, he's got to step up. He's got to be the franchise center. I know it's early. I know he's like 20 years old, but they want it sooner rather than later. Zach Werenski will do his thing from the back end, but they need a forward to really drive play, and I do believe Adam Fantilli is capable of that. I think that 59 points, it feels like he should get there, in my opinion. I think he's going to have to be leaned on, basically, at this point. They have to absolutely use him. They have Sean Monahan there, who's been around the league, good veteran presence at center. They can use him to maybe shield Fantilli from some of the absolute worst matchups at times. But I think all the offensive opportunity, all the power play time, all of that has to go to Fantilli at this point. This projection that I have him for, that's still just under 17 minutes. I think that's pretty, that's basically just building in some risk that Dean Evason doesn't like some things about the young player's game as he's getting used to the NHL still. He obviously didn't play a full season last year. So I'm just building in some risk there, but you can obviously see, what if Fantilli is that dude and Evason absolutely loves him? When we talked about Columbus, we talked about how Evason did identify guys like Matt Boldy as ascending talents and did start to give them more and more minutes as they earned them, basically, as their play deserved it. Yep. So if Fantilli's up for the challenge, I can definitely see him getting into the 18 plus, 19 plus, dare I say 20-minute range for this team this year. And if he's doing that, the sky's the limit. So that's exactly what I want from my sleepers, and I think Adam Fantilli fits this bill to a T.
Yeah, I love it. I don't really have too much to add. Obviously, I'm big on Fantilli as well. The only knock on him is he's center only, at the end of your draft. But I don't know, if you're fading centers, remember that Adam Fantilli is there. This guy, it's unfortunate that he had that injury last year because we didn't really get to see the full Fantilli, the full Fanti. All right. That's workshopping that. And we had Pascal Vincent in here doing his damnedest to piss everybody on the team off. So I love the addition of Dean Evason here. And yeah, unfortunately, like the tragic passing of Johnny Gaudreau is going to bump some players up the lineup for fantasy purposes, right? And
Right.
Fantilli is going to be leaned on a lot more. So with you've got him for 59, I've got him for 61, and I feel like we're just scratching the surface here, right? But ultimately, like we're banking on a big increase in ice time and opportunity here with this player. So that said, I mean, he shows out in everything. This is a pure offensive talent with bangs. He's a beefer too, and he's only 20. So there's a good peripheral floor there. He's obviously really good at rush play, shots, chances, all that stuff. And he's really fast. This guy's a great skater. So I'm just a big fan of the player, and I'm excited to see what he's able to do this year. I hope he's fully healthy from that laceration that he had. I think it was a calf laceration. Was that right, Nate?
Honestly, I can't remember anymore.
I can't remember. Yeah. It was something like that, like a skate cut, and yeah, they just kind of shut him down for the season. But yeah, I think he's going to get a big time chance here, and power play 1 has got to be his. There's no question there, and I think that's where he's really going to pop up too. So 60 points at the end of your draft. Like we don't know what this guy can do, and I think he's really going to show us this season.
Yep. It was a lacerated calf. They decided he didn't need to be exposed to Pascal Vincent anymore, and they shut him down for the season, and they'll restart his career under Dean Evison this year. Absolutely love me some Adam Fantilli. Blake, give us your sleeper number 2.
You bet, buddy. Damn, Gina. Oh, it's Martin Necas. Martin Lawrence, Martin, the sitcom from the 90s. Nate, were you even born? I don't know. Let's move on.
Just barely.
Oh, God. It's just... I don't know what I'm doing here. That's fine. Anyways, shout out to Martin Lawrence. Shout out to Martin Necas. All right. This guy, again, just what I described. He's coming off a season that was, quite a big difference from the season previous, right? In 2022-23, this guy had 71 points in 82 games. That's an amazing season for a guy that kind of came out of nowhere, right? And he had 26 power play points that year to boot. Fast forward 1 year, and he's coming off a 53-point season in 77 games where he was put onto power play 2. So he lost basically a minute off of his power play time on ice. His power play production was cut in half. He only had 13 power play points, still had 8 power play goals. But the thing with Martin Necas that was really interesting to me is I don't think a lot has to happen for him to reach my projection, which is 29 goals and 40 assists. So that's 69 points. Nice. All right. Giggity, everybody. Giggity. All right. That's a Family Guy reference for those that don't know. Let's move on. But yeah, like his shots on goal per 60 and individual Corsi for per 60 last year in his 53-point season, they were career highs at even strength, right? His shooting percentage was right in line with career numbers. His IPP was reasonable as well. His on-ice shooting percentage was much lower than it was last season. So I think a small regression there is probably likely. Nothing crazy, right? We're not going off the rails here. It's just the power play, right? That's where he fell off massively. I'm not even worried that Necas doesn't have a left wing to start the season, right? We don't know who's playing with him on left wing. I'm not even worried that he could be playing with, offer sheet legend, Barry Kotkaniemi, Nate's favorite player. I'm not even worried about that. It'll be him or Jack Drury, right? I think centering that second line. Maybe, I don't know, Bradley Nadeau. I'm kind of hoping gets a look there, but who knows what RBA is going to do. But yeah, I mean, he spent a lot of time with Kotkaniemi in his big season as well. Necas did. The one thing that is really different from his big season and to what he might get this upcoming season is he played a lot in his big season with Andrei Svechnikov. And I don't really see that happening this upcoming year. So, I mean, yeah, at even strength, I think even if he just kind of holds what he was able to do last year, I feel like that's going to be fine. And then you just throw 13 more power play points on top of what he did. Now we're looking at a 66-point season. Then you throw 5 more games on there because he only played 77 games. Now we're looking at 69 points. So I feel pretty damn good about this. And not to mention, like, Necas did a lot with very little. Like this guy, like I said, his metrics actually got better. His metrics got better on the power play as well. He just wasn't getting the time. So it's power play time here. I don't think RBA has any other choice than to trot Necas out there for the full 3 minutes. That's what I'm hoping for, and that's what I think is the most likely outcome, and that's where I see the 69-point Necas, and I could see him getting over 70. He got 71 in his big season. I could see him doing that again, and maybe even 75. I don't know. Where are you at with Necas this year, Nate?
Yeah, I'm definitely lower in terms of the base projection. I've got him down for, where'd he go here? 27 goals, so close on the goals, but I've got him at 32 assists, 59 points. That's mostly just, I'm pretty worried
you hate
about...
Jesperi Kotkaniemi?
Yeah, that might be part of it. I really hope that Necas doesn't have to play alongside Kotkaniemi. That would probably reduce his projection even more. But
Oh my
uh,
God.
I think that Necas is really talented for sure. But I think that it really depends how Necas is approaching this season personally. I've seen an article, him talking about, he said, I'm 25 now. I'm not a young buck anymore. It feels like he's got something to prove. He said last year it wasn't his best season. He said he can be better. He was up and down. He thinks he can be better. So I like to hear that from a player coming in, obviously, short term contract with Carolina after kind of a tumultuous offseason. Think he does feel like he's got something to prove where he can, shove it back and say, hey, I'm totally worth a big time deal here. Whether or not he gets the opportunity, whether or not he gets the line mates is my biggest worry with Necas. But again, talking about a sleeper, talking about a guy who has that potential to absolutely go off, for sure, Martin Necas has that in spades. I love that the underlying metrics are on a good trend here. Even with him talking about how he didn't feel like it was his best season, he still got the highest shots per 60 of his career. Love to see that from Martin Necas. So overall, I do agree. I'm drafting him ahead of my projection, basically, because I do want a piece of this. I do think that there are more outcomes possible where he absolutely smashes than where he like completely disappoints. So yeah, I am. This is a player where I've kind of earmarked. Yeah, I'll draft him ahead of where I have him projected, just because I do think there are some scenarios where he does crest 70 points, and you're really really happy with what you get. All right, my second sleeper is going to be Dylan Guenther, another one we've been talking about a lot this offseason. My base projection for him 27 goals, 32 assists, 59 points. It's hard to extrapolate. We, sometimes talk about being a little bit careful with how we extrapolate some of these younger players and try not to get, too far over our skis with the early returns on some players. But it's really hard to not get excited about what Dylan
Yeah.
Guenther put together in a 45 game sample for the Arizona Coyotes last year. Just about 10 shots per 60, over 10 individual scoring chances for per 60 at all strengths. And in 16 minutes and 16 seconds average time on ice, that climbed throughout the year. And he was an absolute fixture on the top power play towards the end of the year, which bodes really, really well, in my opinion, for his role there in the upcoming season. I think he's going to be a fixture on the top power play again. I think he's got a really good shot. I think he may have overperformed in terms of possibly the shooting percentage, but definitely the on ice shooting percentage. I think that might tick back down just a little bit this year. But I am also really interested in the rest of this team coming up. I
Yeah.
think Utah in general, to me, like, I know they're going to a new place, a lot can happen, like things could go sideways for sure here. But I also look at what they did this offseason. They focused on shoring up the back end. Getting pucks out of their zone would be a nice change for this team. I think this team in general has a huge chance to step forward. And I think that some of the line mates that Guenther might play with, the Logan Cooleys of the world, you've got the distributor, Matthias Michelli, maybe find some magic with him at some point this year. There are just so many options with Utah where, like, if just a couple of them break out alongside Guenther, then we could really be in a scenario where he's absolutely crushing this projection. He's like
Yep.
scoring 35 goals. Like, he's just the guy you had to have this year. So, I really do think that Dylan Guenther is a guy that you absolutely have to target later on in your drafts this year.
I love it. And yeah, we have to bring this player up because the ceiling is pretty damn high. And it's weird. It kind of came out of nowhere. Like if you look at what he's been able to do, 33 games in his first year, 15 points, sure. But yeah, 64-point pace in 45 games last year. And straight on to the power play 66% power play share. I love that. I
Yeah.
see his time on ice going up a little bit. Like he had 16 minutes, 17 seconds last year. I think that's going to go up.
Yeah.
I think we both projected him for more. Plus, yeah, like it will, like Logan Cooley, I think
Mm-hmm.
is going to take a step. And also I could see Guenther playing on the top line at times here. If they put the lines in a blender a little bit, Nick Schmaltz jumps down to that second line there, and plus, oh God, there's so many things with Guenther. It's like Hayton is coming back, right? Barrett Hayton, like this is a real player, someone that can do stuff here for a team in reality and, maybe a little bit in fantasy, but like you said, there's so many pieces there in Utah. And I think Guenther is kind of at the top of the heap with Clayton Keller And I love that. It's Keller, it's Cooley, it's Guenther, and they're kind of riding that wave. And now you got Sergachev on the back end. You got good goaltending in Ingram. I see him hitting this, I think, fairly easily. Like maybe that's the spicy take. I don't know, but like 60 points, Dylan Guenther, I think, if everything kind of maintains, I feel really good about this projection.
Yep. All right, Blake, give us your sleeper number 3.
Okay. We got to go with Alex Tuch of the Buffalo Sabres. This is an interesting guy to call a sleeper, right? I mean, people are aware of Alex Tuch, and if you listen to this podcast at all, like we've brought up Alex Tuch numerous times, just because both our projections kind of came out looking pretty damn sweet for this guy. Like I've got Tuch for 28 goals, 42 assists, 70 points. But he just came off a 59-point season. Right. And that, again, like it's just one of the main things I was looking at for sleepers. Like this guy was drafted pretty highly the year before because of his breakout there in Buffalo, 79 points in 74 games in 2022-23. So people drafted him higher accordingly. And then he just, really pissed them off. And I love when players like this piss their GMs off, because then he's going to fall down draft boards and we're going to be able to do something. So I think, first off, this projection is really conservative. I bumped him up in a few of his metrics, but yeah, one of the things that happened is shots on goal per 60 were down last year. And I think that's the outlier, right? I think it's going to kind of go back up to where it is. Like, he's usually around like 9 shots on goal per 60 at even strength, where he was at 7.8 last year. So I've got him for 8.5, just a little regression there, similar shooting percentage. So nothing crazy at even strength. His on-ice shooting percentage was similar at even strength that it was last year. So that's sustainable. No issues there. The main thing, again, with this player was the power play. And Buffalo's power play stank. It was stinky. And Mr. Granato, what are you doing? Like, yeah, we got Tage Thompson here. No. Is there a third power play unit? Let's just throw Tage out on the third power play. I don't even know if that's a thing. But if it is, Tage, you're headlining it. That's great. I mean, God, what was going on? Like, Tuch had 11 power play points last year after 20 the year previous, right? And the thing with Tuch too, he's not a great power play performer. He's not expected to, like, he got 20 power play points in a year where Buffalo was crushing on the power play. So he's not really that guy there. He's kind of like the Zach Hyman of the Buffalo power play. Just kind of opportunistic, like, facilitating chances, right, while the big boys do their work. But he's definitely better than 11 points. I think that there's no question there. I've got him for 16 power play points after that. And again, that's nothing crazy. I just think he had, like I said, he had 20 in his big year. Not a big involvement there, but he's out there. And if we're saying Tage is going to have a bounce back, if we're saying JJ Peterka is going to establish himself, and Dahlin is an elite D-man, then it stands to reason that Alex Tuch is going to see some benefits out there and smash his previous numbers. Plus, he has an amazing peripheral floor, right? This guy had 72 hits, 86 blocks last year. And, maybe the 86 blocks, that's a career high. Like, I'm not sure I'm expecting that again, but he can do it. And that just absolutely brings his value up even more. So 70 points, great per riffs, better power play performance. I think Alex Tuch is going to smash for you this year. And you're not paying premium prices for Alex Tuch this year. He was in a conversation like one of the higher end right wingers. I might have mentioned him in like the top right wings last year, Alex Tuch. No one's doing that this year.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Alex Tuch is definitely flying under the radar this year in a lot of more casual leagues. I think in the sharper leagues, people are onto him. I know we've been talking about him, it feels like every episode, and with good reason. Alex Tuch, I have him for 15.2 power play points, and he still comes to 72 points overall for me. Imagine if he has, like, what if he goes off on the power play? What if the new Buffalo power play is actually really good? They have the horses, right? Like, it could happen. Yeah, I just think there's a lot of scenarios in which Alex Tuch like just absolutely smashes. This feels like a good spot for him to be, but what if he hits a point per game? I think that's possible with a better power play involvement basically and efficiency there. So yeah, there's a lot of reasons to be in on Alex Tuch, and I do think there's a really good chance that he is a key part of a lot of fantasy championship teams this year.
Nice.
All right, before we get into the last 5 of the sleepers here, I'm going to talk just for a second about the Patreon. Supporters, $2 a month, you get access to the patron only live shows. I just last week did the September patron only live show. It was a good time. We had a bunch of people in there asking questions as I went through stuff, and I went through basically everything draft strategy that I could think of. I just like dumped into a presentation and we talked about it. And yeah, people were asking questions as I was going through. It was a great time, over an hour of back and forth. Really good time for the patrons there. That's posted on Patreon. So if you join now, you'll have access to that immediately. And you can listen to that back if that's something you're interested in. Just basically me brain dumping about everything I'm thinking about pre-draft and in draft and everything. So if that's something you're interested in, $2 a month, you can get access to that. The $8 a month tier, the Apples tier, you get that, but you also get access to patron only Discord channels. You get priority for listener leagues. We've got we're like almost halfway towards a 6th listener league. I don't know if we'll get to all the way
Dear
to
God.
filling that, but we've got 5 already done. You also get my show notes. This is a big thing for a lot of people. They're interested in my weekly ad targets that Blake and I talk about on the weekly waiver wire show. You also get my show notes for the Puzzling Players episode and the flagship show that Blake and I do together as well. And then lastly, you're going to get Apples and Geno's player evaluation tools. That's going to be a key thing, I think, this year. A lot of people were asking about last year. I was showing basically like I don't know what you'd call it, like a beta version of it on the podcast last year as I was doing the Puzzling Players live streams. And this year I've refined it a little bit and made it a little bit more presentable. And I think people are going to really enjoy using that to compare players and decide who they want to pick up. Get your last 5 games evaluation, put 2 players side by side, and really think about the metrics that matter for fantasy that we're talking about all the time here. One extra thing that I'm going to be dropping pretty soon. I've been getting into Drafters Fantasy. They have an $11 entry, 5,000 total entry across the entire field best ball tournament that's going on over at Drafters Fantasy. If you use the promo code GENOS, you can get a first time deposit match up to $100. So if you put in $100, you'll get matched an extra $100 and you get $200 to play with. $11 for each team that you draft, 8 team drafts, 18 rounds. It's super fun, no roster management all year long. I've been pounding these drafts because I think they're so much fun. But yeah, use a promo code GENOS if you want to get in there. I'm gonna be dropping a tool that's gonna go out to the Apples and the GENOS tiers, and they're gonna be able to use my ranks, some stuff I'm looking at in terms of games played optimization for this tournament, and also just a little bit of a primer on what I'm looking at, how I'm approaching this tournament strategy wise. The ADPs are pretty wild right now, so it's a good time to get in if you want to be in on that. And lastly, the Genos tier, the $15 a month tier for all you degenerates out there. This gets you all the previous perks that I mentioned, but it also gets you every single question answered guaranteed via DM with myself if you're interested in some hands-on fantasy talk this
Hands
year.
on. All right. Yeah. And with that extra friendship tier, does that include crossing the streams, Nate?
I believe the best friends tier does include crossing streams. I think it's like once per year. I'd have to check the fine print.
Don't cross the streams. It's like Ghostbusters. Oh.
All right, my sleeper number 3. Let's get into it. Dylan Guenther, we talked about. Now we got to talk about Logan Cooley. I'm very high on Cooley as well. Really like what he put together towards the end of last year in his rookie season. A lot of players will kind of start hot and then fade towards the back end of the season. I don't like to see that. What I love to see is Logan Cooley getting better and better as the season wore on. 8.4 shots per 60 over his last 20 games, and just really seemed to gain a lot of confidence throughout the year. It was tough going for a while there for Logan Cooley for sure. I think people are going to be really off of him because of that, but I think that's going to be a mistake, especially in deeper leagues. I think there's a really good chance that this is a bust out year in a big way for Logan Cooley. Alongside a Dylan Guenther breakout. Maybe these two guys just elevate each other's games. They could both be on that top power play. That's going to be something I'm watching for sure with Logan Cooley in the early going. I think for sure that the Utah Hockey Club wants Logan Cooley to be on the top power play. at some point in the next couple of years. Whether or not he gets that rate from the start of the season is up for debate. So as soon as he's there, and I do think it's only a matter of time, Logan Cooley, I believe, will absolutely take off. I think, he's averaging around 16 minutes a game towards the end of last year. I think this year he's much more up in the 17, maybe even 18-minute range. I think by the end of the season, he eclipses Barrett Hayton as the top center on the Utah Hockey Club. And we could be looking at a guy who's just getting started right when we're into fantasy playoffs and is part of a lot of fantasy championship teams once again. Blake, what's your thoughts on Logan Cooley?
Yeah, I love it. We have to look at kind of the acumen of this player, right? And there was a time before he came into the league, people were saying this is the best player not playing in the NHL, right? Logan Cooley, and that's not something people say lightly, right? This guy has an amazing skill set, and I love that he played all 82 games last year, 20 goals, 24 assists, beautiful. That was in really limited minutes, right? I mean, 15:49 he averaged last year. He was just over 2 minutes on the power play. I think that's really where he's going to pop off, right? Like I believe that he will get power play 1. I think that maybe not at the start. Maybe they go with Barrett Hayton. I don't know kind of his level of health at this point and how they want to sort of ramp Barrett Hayton up. And, obviously Hayton is probably a little bit better at faceoffs. So maybe that makes sense to have him out there. But I think Logan Cooley, it's going to be a matter of time if he doesn't get it right off the bat where he is going to be on that power play. And at that point, now we're looking at a top 6 player with power play 1, and that power play could be pretty damn good, right? So I'm just big on the player. I think he's going to definitely smash his 44 points last year. You only like 51 points. To me, that's kind of conservative, right? But it goes along with your definition. This is a guy that can maybe smash that. If things break really right for Cooley, we could be looking at a 60-point player.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's well within the cards. Last year, 20 goals, 24 assists, 44 points, and everybody thought that was a big-time disappointment. So I got him for a modest uptick here, but if he does take that power play, I think maybe over the course of the season, this is where it ends up, but I think you're going to like the production that's coming more towards the back half of the season, and for that reason, I think he fits this bill pretty well. All right, Blake, give us sleeper number 4.
You bet your sweet bippy, buddy. We're talking about MB, Matty Beniers. This is a guy I've talked about a lot this offseason, and I'm still talking about him because he's getting faded to a ridiculous degree. It doesn't make any sense to me, besides the fact that he had a terrible season last year with 37 points in 77 games after winning the Calder Trophy, right? In a weak year, granted, but his rookie season, 57 points in 80 games. Decent, right? Last year, 37 points, like I said, that's awful, right? And the thing with Seattle, under Hackstall anyway, like that, obviously we can talk about that in a minute. It's nice he's out of there, but under Hackstall, they just lived and died with the volatility of their rush play, right? And, in Beniers' first year, they led the league in 5-on-5 shooting percentage. And then last year, they were 6th worst. I mean, that is shocking. That's quite a swing, right? And we saw that in the production of a lot of the Kraken players, right? So Beniers was a major casualty on that one. So everybody took a step back, but I think there's a lot of reason for optimism with Beniers, especially for fantasy to me. And it starts with the new coach, Dan Bylsma. I expect to see a top power play unit with Bylsma there. And I think Beniers should be in that conversation. He's going to be in the top 6. His contract says so, right? And plus he's a really good player. And I think that he's going to get the top power play. If there is a top power play, Beniers is going to be on it, in my opinion. I also think he's going to start the season with Old Faithful, Jordan Eberle, and then Jared McCann, who both you and I, Nate, are kind of earmarking as a player of interest for this season. I think McCann is a really nice piece. I think he's a 70-point player, right? And if Beniers is with McCann all year, then that's just going to be a benefit for Beniers. So I think too, like I said, this guy's going to be top power play, and I have him projected for 3 minutes on the power play with 19 power play points, which I don't think is crazy, right? Like he got 13 last year in a stinky year, right? Averaged 2 minutes and 30 seconds on the power play. Thank you, Dave Hackstall. What the hell are you doing? I mean, get this man on the power play. He just won the Calder. I don't understand. But yeah, there is some things with Beniers as well, and the Kraken. Like there's variance, right?
Yeah.
Like, we need to see the deployment in training camp. This is a guy who I think will definitely bounce back. He just secured the bag, like I said, but he doesn't show it in those metrics that we like, Nate. He doesn't shoot. He doesn't generate individual scoring chances. But when you rewind it back, I mean, Beniers does all those things that I like. Chance assists, shot assists, zone entries that lead to chances. He's king there, right? But that gives me hope, because if he's with McCann is the guy that can finish that crap, right? Like,
Yeah.
so I really like that pairing as well. And I just think that there's a 60-point player here. I projected him for 26 goals, 36 assists, 62 points. That's nothing crazy to me. That would be a career high for Beniers, but I don't know. I feel like it can't get much worse in Seattle than it did last year in terms of their conversion. And I think this guy's going to bounce back big time.
Yeah, I mean, worth noting too, like the guy's 21 years old. He'll turn 22 in November, but still a very young player. And yeah, I have him projected for 18 minutes, 15 seconds. That's tied with Chandler Stevenson for the most amongst all forwards on Seattle. But yeah, what does the new coach bring, right? And that's what we're looking for with these sleepers. We're looking for variance in these profiles that's not necessarily being accounted for by the fantasy hockey community. We're looking for potential, right? We're looking for, maybe Matty Beniers under the new coach is just the 20 plus a minute guy. Like he's got the two-way game. That's always been a calling card, that he's more than just, some kind of scorer. That's not really been, he's never been like the elite offensive talent coming out. That's never been his calling card. He's very good, but he's always been more of, I don't know, like maybe the Jonathan Taves one gets thrown around a lot, right? Like he's more that model than maybe like the elite offensive guy. But if you are that guy, then you can get yourself out there for 20 plus minutes a night and you can get there in terms of the scoring. So yeah, I do think there are some scenarios in which Matty Beniers gets up to that 65, maybe 70 point range this year. Yeah, in certain leagues, depending on how heavily your peripherals are weighted, Matty Beniers may not be as worthwhile just because he doesn't do that as much. But yeah, at least in the points category, I think he's being a little bit undervalued on the basis of the poor season he had last year. My sleeper number 4 is going to be Gabriel Vilardi of the Winnipeg Jets. I've got him projected for 36 goals, 22 assists, 58 points. It's tough to project this player. He had, parts of a season there. Started out really well, had a big injury, came back, was pretty solid again. It's a little bit hard to exactly parse the situation and figure out what's going to happen in terms of his efficiency. Like I've got him at a 17.3% shooting percentage to get to this 36 goals. That feels high, but I also feel pretty confident that I'm like keeping him tamped down pretty hard in terms of his IPP, like to keep him at 58 points. Like if he doesn't get to 36 goals, I still feel really good about the 58 points. And I do think there's also a scenario here in which the IPP goes up and he's just absolutely smashing this. Like he gets the 36 goals, but he also gets 30 assists, 30 plus assists. And now you're like absolutely just smashing where you have to go to get Gabriel Vilardi on your teams this year. So I think that's a definite possibility. This is a player who was really highly touted coming out, 11th overall pick going back to 2017, and then had terrible injury luck for multiple years, and kind of continued last year if you look at it that way. But yeah, like very different injuries. I don't think this is a player that's injury prone. If you've heard Apples and Ginos before, you'll know that Blake and I are very willing to fade the injury narrative in the name of seeking some upside from our players, and served us pretty well in the past. Gabriel Vilardi absolutely fits that narrative for me. I think people are fading him based on the fact that he only played 47 games last year. If he plays in 82, I think he's going to be an absolute smash in your lineups. He's going to eclipse 30 goals, and I think he's got potential to push that 65, 70 point range in a full season on the top power play alongside Mark Scheifele and Kyle Connor.
I love it. Yeah, this is exactly what we're talking about. A guy that we don't know what to do with, right? But when you dig under the hood a little bit, like this guy is uber efficient, right? And he's definitely been prioritized by Rick Bowness and Scott Arniel as well. Like when he's healthy, they're getting him out there. Line 1, power play 1. They like that fit there. And I don't think that's going to change with Arniel as the coach full time. So I like the situation that he's walking into. I'm not concerned about the injury narrative, but yeah, like when players have a medical issue, right? Like something was wrong with this guy's spleen. Like that's, yeah, I mean, I don't know what a spleen does, to be honest with you, but like, I like, you probably need that, right? Like it's not good. So I'm mildly aware of that, but at the place where you're going to be drafting this guy, like this is a player you absolutely want to take a swing on, because again, we're looking at line 1, power play 1 at insane value, wherever he's drafted. And I think I just like the situation he's in there. And, he's only 25. Like this guy's good to go. I think, like you said, there's room for that IPP. Like he's had some weird IPPs over the year here, hasn't he? Like, and he hasn't really played a full season either, but his last season in LA, his IPP was 86% at even strength. Like, what the hell? Which is probably the outlier, but he was 53% last year, which is low, kind of. I mean, because he's had a 53% year as well with IPP. So where does that land? I've put him a little bit higher. I think I've got him at 57% at even strength, and his on ice shooting percentage was sky high last year at even strength as well. I'm expecting that to come down, but not that much. I think it was 12.28 last year at even strength. I've taken it down to like 11 or something like that, which is still high, but this is a player that's shown to do that. He's playing with good players, Kyle Connor and Mark Scheifele, both underrated players. I like this guy a lot. And, a full season of Gabe Vilardi, absolutely. I think 60 points is in the wheelhouse.
Yeah, one other thing that I wanted to mention that I forgot earlier, I do feel like Winnipeg is a little bit thinner up front this year. They've got that top line that played together most of the time when healthy last year, Scheifele, Connor, Vilardi. Then they've got Ehlers on the second line, but then we talked about it, like who's going to center this line? Like Nemestikov was the guy that we thought was maybe the most likely. Lowry is kind of just always your 3C there, right? So it is a little rough. Like there's definitely a scenario in which this top line just eats minutes all year long. This projection for me on Vilardi is just under 18 minutes. So what if he's skating 19? There's just lots of scenarios that I really like the outcome for when it comes to Gabriel Vilardi. All right, Blake, give us your deep sleeper. For the fifth one here, we both took a guy that's a bit more of a swing. We wanted to push ourselves a little bit for the people. So give me the deep sleeper you've got here, Blake.
Deep, way deep. He's sleeping right now. Wake up, Michael Bunting. The bunt cake is here. I can't even believe I'm talking. I'm like promoting the bunt cake. I've talked Yang on this man for 2 years, but damn, did he land in a plum spot in Pittsburgh there? Like, first off, 55 points in 81 games last year. That's decent. That's serviceable. No problem. He actually had really nice power play numbers last year. 21 power play points for the bunt cake, Michael Bunting. So that's really nice. Just under 3 minutes power play time on ice. He was very efficient there. Like this guy only had 15 minutes, 41 seconds average time on ice on the year. So definitely like relied on the power play and did stuff with the time that he had there. So I'm happy about that. But then he went to Pittsburgh, bang, 19 points in 21 games. I really like that. He was stapled to Evgeny Malkin, who we might talk about a little bit later, but I think Malkin still has some juice, and this guy's on his line and power play one there in Pittsburgh, which was absolutely stinky last year. And I'm projecting Pittsburgh's power play to not be one of the top 3 worst in the league, right? I'm projecting it to maybe go up to, 20th worst. And even if that happens, like everybody's going to eat, right? They're going to get more production there. So that said, like this guy's, you could pick Bunting with your last pick. Again, top 6 player, power play 1, last pick in your draft. What the hell are we doing? This makes no sense. And I do think that Bunting can take another step in a full season in Pittsburgh, right? His shooting percentage was the worst of his career as well last year. Lots of room for that to bump up even just a little bit. His time in Carolina, he was minimized, right? And that had something to do with his overall production. Obviously, all his metrics were up, like everything was up across the board, his time in Pittsburgh. So I love that. He's got a really solid peripheral floor. Every time I say peripheral floor, I think pelvic floor. Oh God, I don't. Yeah, I mean,
some thoughts you can just keep to yourself.
Yeah,
the people would be okay.
Well, we edit it, right? I mean, but we never do, right? Nate and I are lazy, and we're just like, I just put it out to the people. They're getting the full Blakey and Natey. But yeah. Last thing on Bunting, to me, it was the tale of 2 seasons, right? You had his Carolina time and his Pittsburgh time. And obviously the production with his Canes affected his overall production. So if you got people expecting, a 50-point season from Bunting or less, I think they're going to be mistaken on that. Like this is a guy, he's getting better deployment, better opportunity here with the Pittsburgh Penguins. And I like what I'm seeing. The bunt cake, this guy does stuff. I mean, his on-ice numbers last year, not terrible. He was 22nd overall in Corsi 4/60. He chucks pucks, and his line does as well with the best of them. Right, Nate?
That's true. Yeah. I'm interested in Bunting as well. My base projection for him came out to 25 goals, 56 points, 200 shots, pretty much on the dot, over a hit per game. And yeah, that's playing with Malkin. If they decide to play him with Crosby and Rust all year,
Yeah.
then you're talking about a big time upgrade in terms of the even strength stuff. So that's there. I gave him 2 minutes 45 seconds on the power play to get to this projection. So if he's a staple on top power play all season long, which I mean, you look at that lineup, like it feels like he probably should be. Yeah, there's definitely some reasons to get excited about Bunting this year. You know, I'm excited about Brian Rust.
Yep.
Obviously, you have to be excited about Crosby. I know you're more bullish than I am on Malkin. So either way, I think there are definitely a lot of good scenarios for Michael
Yep.
Bunting this year. And I think like even if he just exceeds expectation to the point where like he's a guy that you just don't drop all year, like that's very worthwhile
That's a win.
late in your drafts, right? So that definitely counts, especially when we're talking about these deep sleepers here.
Way deep.
All right. My deep sleeper here is going to be Marco Rossi from the Minnesota Wild. I have him for 22 goals, 22 assists, 44 points as a base projection here. Now, really, I think this one's a little bit different from the ones we've talked about because something really has to hit for Rossi to go much beyond this. But if it does hit, like it could be spectacular. And so that's why he's going so late in drafts. That's why he's basically an afterthought at this point, right? Is because everybody's talking about he's not going to be on the top line with Cap and Boldy. Nobody thinks that at the moment. Nobody thinks he's going to be on the top power play. But the what if scenarios with Marco Rossi are really what kind of keep me awake at night, thinking about what this player could be. As a player, was very highly touted. Everybody thought it was a steal when he fell to the Minnesota Wild back in the 2020 draft. He fell to ninth. People thought that was a big time steal for them at the time. Then he had COVID, long COVID. It was a
Yep.
huge ordeal for him just to get back and playing. Had a good AHL season, had a strong year last year. His first full year in the NHL, 82 games, played the full season, 21 goals, 40 points. It was a good season for Marco Rossi, still just 22. He'll be turning 23 years old here shortly. And I think he's absolutely penciled in as a second line center. But the what if scenarios, like I'm saying here, the what if scenarios about being alongside Kirill Kaprizov at even strength on the power play. Maybe it takes a Joel Eriksson Ek injury. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe there's some scenarios in which Rossi just takes that step this year. And the coach there, who's the coach there in Minnesota there, Blake?
I don't know. Something about ketchup. I don't know what's happening. Like the delicious condiment. I put ketchup on rice. Fun fact. I've done that before, and I'll do it again.
All right, I'm never throwing things to you ever again. That
Oh God,
was
I'm sorry about
truly
this.
horrifying. All right, Marco Rossi, yeah, could be good definitely this year. I'm totally thrown off by ketchup on
You're just like,
rice.
yeah,
Oh
just
my.
mix it together. It's fine. All right, just be open minded, Nate. What are you doing? You're so closed off.
Yeah, that's one way to describe the emotions I'm feeling right now. But anyway, Marco Rossi, the what if scenarios, I think, like, honestly, I think that this is a player who could score at a 70-point pace at some point this season. Probably doesn't get to 70 points on the full season, like end of season numbers. But if and when he's on top line, top power play, like, that would almost be my expectation for a player in his second full season in the league that had a decent rookie season. If he played along those guys that you know were really high on this year here at Apples and Ginos in Kaprizov and Boldy, I would be ecstatic about having a Marco Rossi on my team. So this is a player that I'm going to be watching very closely. I'm going to be watching the Wild very closely all year, trying to figure out what they're doing with those lines and the top power play.
Yeah, the Wild are a very interesting team this year. Like we've talked about it at length, but they're in cap hell right now. I feel like they're treading water, but the problem is they have elite players on their team, right? So they can't just tank, because they've got guys like Cap and Boldy and, they've got, their goaltending was terrible last year, but I do still trust Philip Gustafson. I think that he's going to bounce back as well. And yeah, Rossi, like he's in there, he's in the mix. I like the season he had last year, 40 points, 82 games. It's nice to just get it out of the way. Like this guy's gone through a lot of crap. And I think, maybe mentally just to get over that hurdle, right? And hopefully, this long COVID that he's been dealing with, like he's got that, somewhat sorted out. I think there's a really good chance that he plays with Cap this year. Like I know everyone's saying it's going to be Jeek, Boldy, and Cap, and I don't think that's going to be 100% a lock, right? Like Rossi played with Cap and the Zucchini Man. Oh yeah, they made some zucchini loaf. I don't know where I'm going with that, but yeah, that was the line he played with more than any other line. was Cap and Matt Zuccarello, right? And I'm just going with not like quarters of the season, just that's the line he played with the most. And I think there's a good chance that he does that again. Can he get on power play one? Like, I don't think so, right? Not at this point. So that's really going to sort of cap him there. But I mean, we're not doing a crazy projection here. You got him for 44. I got him for 45. What if there's an injury to anyone there? Like, he's bumping up here. And I think we're both comfortable saying this is a player that should probably take a step next year.
Yeah.
So yeah, again, it's, to me, this is a player that I'm watching on the waiver wire. Like you said, we're watching the Wild and seeing what's what, and be ready to pounce on Marco Rossi if, you know, he comes out flying, or if some opportunity and extra deployment comes his way.
Absolutely. All right, we will get to our honorable mentions here. We wanted to throw in a couple players that didn't quite make the cut, but we wanted to shout them out anyway. Blake, give us a couple here.
Well, why don't you give me the first one you see there in the red? I don't know, Nate. I can't read. My eyes aren't very good.
Yeah, this is not one that I personally can
Oh,
endorse, but does appear that Blake is choosing to wager his entire fantasy season and career on the outcome of Pierre-Luc Dubois in Washington this year.
Oh my God, that's actually kind of frightening. That doesn't sound that good, but I love PLD this year. Again, like, just the reasons we said, this guy stunk last year, like bad. And he left a bad taste in everybody's mouth. He signed a massive contract, just crapped the bed, no question. He's admitted it. He played terribly. The LA Kings have admitted it. Like, they didn't put him in a position to succeed. 40 points in 82 games. PLD, that's some of the worst money ever spent on a season, right? This is awful. But he didn't have any power play time. That's a key piece. He's a good power play performer. This guy's a sniper on the power play, and they didn't have him doing that. And even at the time they did have him out, he still had 7 power play goals, but he only averaged 2 minutes and 7 seconds on the power play with LA. Like, what the hell? That's negligent. That's just straight negligence. To Todd McClellan there and Jim Hill, boys, you're on notice. All right. You got PLD, you get him out there and he put the biscuit in the basket. We know this, but anyways, I think that he's going to get power play 1 on Washington. Right. And it's kind of an interesting situation because, like, I'm down on Ovechkin this year, as you know, but he's still great on the power play. Ovechkin is amazing on the power play. There's no question about that, but they didn't have any horses last year on that power play in Washington like other teams on the PK didn't have to sag off of Ovechkin. They could just play Ovechkin and no one else could really do anything, right? Whereas now you got a guy like PLD out there, I think, on the right side. Like, yeah, now you've got another weapon here. You've got a guy that I don't know if he'll play the flank or if he'll play bumper or even net front. I'm not sure, but I think that just having Ovechkin out there is going to open space up for PLD. Right. And he'll be able to get the biz. He's motivated. He's happy to be there. I'm talking a lot on PLD, but damn it, I feel good about this. And again, I've only projected PLD to get back to his 60-point ways. All right. I'm not going ballistic. I'm not going bananas on PLD. 60 points is what I'm expecting from this player with some very good periffs. And that is absolutely a player that you should have on your fantasy team. What say you, Nate?
Yeah, I don't like this one personally. You know this, but I have him projected for 51 points. That's over 17 minutes a night there. I don't really see, I do think he'll be on the top power play. I have it projected that way. I've given him 3 minutes power play time on ice. I think that Strome is Ovechkin's center, and I think Ovechkin is the only winger in Washington worth playing alongside. So if Dubois is going to do something this year, I do think he's going to have to do it himself. And that's just not been a recipe for success for Dubois. I think that going to Washington, I know he played down the lineup in LA last year, but down the lineup in LA is still better than the second line in Washington, in my opinion. I have the power play points projected in there, and it still doesn't come out very, very favorable for PLD. I don't know that this power play is going to be, all that good this year necessarily. It wasn't last year, so it's hard to project it to just suddenly get extremely better for no apparent reason. There's just 3 or 4 flags that PLD has to clear. It feels like a lot has to go right for him to really eclipse this, to the point where I'm sad that I faded PLD. So that's my current take, and I'm sticking to it.
I love it. My second one, I'll just give you this real quick. I'm not going to talk on this man a long time, but I've got Evgeny Malkin in here just as a sleeper. I know it sounds strange, but it's more about like just the value where you can get Malkin. Like he had 67 points in 82 games. Obviously he's fading, right? There's age related decline. He can't skate very well, but I still think he's a more effective player than Ovechkin, to be honest. Like I really do. Like he's not as good of a goal scorer clearly, but I think his environment is a lot better. He's still going to be on that Pittsburgh power play, which is going to be a lot better. Like it was just 1 year ago that he had 36 points on the power play. Last year he had 18. I mean, that's a bit too drastic for me to be like, okay, this is the player he is now. Like I just didn't see that last year. He didn't look that different to me. There's age-related decline for sure, but I'm banking on that Pittsburgh power play to get a lot better, like I said. And even if we get Malkin back up to like 25 points, we're looking at maybe a 70-point player. And I've seen him going so late. It's obscene. This is a guy that is absolutely worth your draft pick, like one of your last 3 draft picks. I think it makes total sense. So I just wanted to throw that out there. I think Malkin needs to be rostered for sure, at least going into the season.
All right. Yeah, Malkin, for myself personally, I think it's somewhat appropriate where he's going. I think that, yeah, he could have another 70-plus point season in him, and you're happy with where you get him. But also, there is the chance that this is kind of the year. Like, this is a player who's older than Crosby, has shown the signs under the hood of decline.
Yep.
And so this could kind of be the year where it really comes to a point where he's not worth having on your team. And so that's enough to give me the pause where I'm like, I don't know if I want to make this bet. And sometimes there are other bets in those ranges in your draft where you're like, yeah, this one could hit in a big way still. And so, yeah, I'm not like fading Malkin. It's just not one that I'm feeling super strongly about personally. For myself, I've got 2 kind of shots in the dark here almost. Just honestly, players that I really wanted to talk about a bit more. So Brandt Clarke's the first one for me. I talked a little bit at length about him when we did our Los Angeles projection series team preview there. But I just want to highlight how good this player has been at all levels. You brought it up while we were talking just before here, Blake, but his hockey prospecting model, shout out to Byron Bader for the work he does with that. But his star probability has been on the ascent since his draft year, and it's up to 94% star probability. His comps come out to looking like Victor Hedman and Evan Bouchard. Like there's these kind of names are in his comps there in terms of the statistical profile that we have here. I really think that like I think I said it on the LA Kings episode that we did. I think Brandt Clarke is a better offensive defenseman than Drew Doughty is right now. I don't know that Drew Doughty is the kind of guy who will just be like, oh yeah, you take power play 1, you're better than I am. I'm not sure that's in Drew Doughty's DNA. And I think obviously LA is pretty indebted to Drew Doughty for all the things he's done for them over the last decade plus. So I'm not sure that there's, a power play 1 role waiting for Brandt Clarke. He might take some time to acclimate. I only have him projected for 16 minutes average time on ice. That seems to be the way these young defensemen come into the league in recent memory in most cases. That being said, Matt Roy out of town, there are some scenarios in which they have to just lean on Brandt Clarke even more. And he could get up there even with the 16 minutes average time on ice. I still got him for 34 points. Like you can just do the multiplication in your mind. If he gets elevated at any point during the season, then for sure this is going to be a player that you're going to want to be in on. If Drew Doughty has an injury at any point in the season, Brandt Clarke becomes rush to the wire. Get this guy on your team ASAP, because I do think this is a player who will score 60, 70, maybe 80 points at some point in his NHL career. I'm that high on Brandt Clarke. So
I love it.
That's the guy for me. I don't know, Blake, you got anything on Brandt Clarke?
Not too much. No, I love that take though. And yeah, like prospects are not exactly my thing, but I'm happy to hear this. And this is definitely a player I'm going to keep my eye on.
All right. The other one I got here is Justice Annunen. I was not inspired by Alexander Georgiev's season last year. I don't know if you were. I know I've heard like, oh, but he was good in the playoffs. Yeah, like goalies do go hot and cold. That is kind of what they do all season long, every single year. So I think that Georgiev got all that volume last year because they kind of felt they had nobody else. They didn't want to rush Annunen. They eventually did bring him up, and when he got there, like it was a 928 save percentage. I know it was only 14 games, but he just like completely outclassed Georgiev. I've heard that it was against the lesser teams. They're letting him play against some lesser teams and work his way into the league and getting some confidence that way. They were playing it correctly, bringing him in that way. But at the same time, like Colorado is probably a top 5 spot for a fantasy goalie, right? If Georgiev is not that guy this year, if he starts to falter, I think this year they're going to be a lot less worried about, the optics of it or like hurting Georgiev's feelings or whatever you want to say. Like, I think they're just going to be like, okay, you're not playing that well. We're going to go and we're going to see what Justice Annunen has. And if he has anything, this spot is a spot where he could absolutely smash. Worth noting, Georgiev, his contract is up after this year, so the Avs don't really have a reason to play him a whole lot this year and put him in a spot to ask for a huge contract next year. So again, it just feels like things are aligning a little bit, and Annunen could be that 0G guy this year.
Yeah, I love it. And I talked to Kevin Woodley about this player as well. And this is a guy that he identified as a 0G option, right? This is a guy he's got gas in the tank. He's like metrics wise, structure wise, he's good to go. And obviously, like you said, Colorado is a team, a coveted team to get a goalie on. I mean, it's been unfortunate, especially last year with Georgiev, because his actual record is amazing. 38 wins, 18 losses, 63 games played. He's a true workhorse, but the metrics were terrible. 897 save percentage, buddy. Oh, man. So I think that Colorado's not going to go to that well again. Yes, he'll still be their number one, but I could see them doing more of almost a tandem, right? Like maybe not a full tandem, but I think Annunen is going to get a lot more starts this year. And if anything happens to Georgiev at all, it's the same with Brandt Clark. Like you run out and you quickly smash and the waiver wire and get Justus Annunen on your team, because this is a real player here. And I think it's a guy that could really succeed in this environment here in Colorado.
Absolutely. All right, we've reached the end of this one, but while you're here, if you could like, rate, review, subscribe, comment, all those things do wonders for us and help us continue to be able to put this out for you. You should definitely clink the link, not the lick, in the description.
Clink the lick.
And join the Apples and Geos Discord community. We got tons of people in there. We're talking fantasy hockey all the time, all day, every day. That's where you want to be to get access to the smartest people around. And you should also, if you haven't already, check out the Apples and Genos Fantasy Guide. I may be biased, but I do think it is the best fantasy guide on the market right now. Book it. But definitely check that out if you haven't. $7.99, Apples and Genos Patreon. Go to shop. It's right there. And I don't think you'll be disappointed if you do decide to make that purchase. I think that might be all that we have for this episode. You should definitely stay tuned for Blakey and Nady Cross Streams, a feature film coming to theaters near you.
What's the rating on that, Nate? I don't know.
It's not yet been rated.
Yeah, okay, unrated. Oh my God, so
yeah,
stupid.
The MPAA has not rated it yet.
Right,
still to come. Yeah, but hopefully this episode brought you some value, maybe some laughs along the way, and helped you get a little bit better at fantasy hockey today. All the advanced stats you heard today came from Natural Stat Trick, terrific free resource. Many thanks to the band there for supplying the music for the podcast. Be sure to check out their Spotify as well. That's it, folks. Much love.